Well, hello and welcome to another short video for Truth Podcast. Now, today, what I wanted to speak about was that, well, when we look at our news channels, we see, there are people that the Israeli government are bringing to Israel with the sole purpose of putting another side to a story. Not like what we hear on the mainstream media. We often hear that the Hamas controlled health ministry is reporting that there's been several children killed. There has been hospitals that has been blown up, and we're hearing all sorts of things really from one angle. Well, over the past number of weeks, we've seen that people have been invited to Israel. Yes, by the Israeli government. They've been taken around, and what they've got to do was to see what it is that the Israeli government are saying, which is happening to the Israelis in Israel. Well, not just the Israelis, because we do see that there was other people that were there over the past few weeks from England. And what they're doing is they are actually going into places from within Israel, and they're speaking to people from all different types of backgrounds. They're speaking to people who are Muslim in nature, they're speaking to people who are Jewish in nature, and they're speaking to people who are, well, an other and other in nature. So what we've got to do is we've got to take a look at the broad picture, and we've got to try to understand, well, what actually is happening, because we can't trust the mainstream media to tell us the truth. We can't trust our governments to tell us the truth. We can't trust, well, let's face it, Western world governments to tell us the truth. So what we've got to do is to put everything into the melting pot and to try to make sense of what's going on. Now, I found myself just a few weeks ago in Poland, in a place called Krakow, as the locals would call it. And I had been there before, and I wanted to visit the concentration camps really to get another look and to understand for myself, is history's patterns something worth looking at? Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, there is an old saying that those that forget the past are condemned to repeat it. Now, I had seen that sign when I was at the Auschwitz and Birkenau concentration camps in, was it 2018, thereabouts? And I can remember the first sign in the first building that I went into. Well, that was a sign that really was etched in my memory, that was there in those concentration camps, specifically in Auschwitz, in the first building that the tour guides would actually take you into. Those that forget the past, are they condemned to repeat it? Now, for myself as an individual, as a rational thinking person, I can't help but see that people are not liking Jewish people. I can't help but try to understand why that it is, let's say, for example, that our mainstream media would be stoking tensions, would be ratcheting tensions, would be accepting the word of Hamas, a designated terrorist organisation, who, let's remember, on the 7th of October, was it 2023, they went into Israel, and what they did was that they caused murder and mayhem in the most brutal way. So whenever we look across the world and we see these free Palestine marches, we see people from within our communities who are on the side of what they say is free Palestine. But whenever we go and we scratch the surface and we try to understand who these people are, well, as I took people just a few weeks ago to a place between the Shankill Road and the Falls Road, and I showed in a conclusive way, in a way that can't be challenged, that there is pictures on a wall between the Shankill and the Falls in where that IRA terrorists in a clenched fist type handshake, which was placed through prison bars, really depicts, and it shows that what we are seeing is that the provisional IRA terrorists, they are in solidarity, because that's what it says, with the prisoners of wars, the POWs of Hamas, and previously in it was at the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and anyone that seems to be against the Jewish nation. Now, am I saying that what's happening in Palestine at the minute is right? Well, all murder is wrong. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I lived in Northern Ireland. I seen what can happen whenever people would be set against each other. And I really seen the pain, the anguish, the human suffering that conflict can cause. So, what's really behind what it is that I'm doing is to try to establish, well, who's in the wrong? Is there a way of literally working this out in a way that the ordinary people wouldn't be suffering for the actions of a few? Now, over the years, I've been looking at, say, Hamas. I've been looking at Palestine. I've been looking at how that they use their own people as human shields. I've been looking at how they send people, forward to the border between what is seen as Palestine and what is Israel, and they cause riots. It results in the rats, that the Israelis, what they do is they attack back. And then whenever something happens to someone that the Hamas people has sent forward to cause a riot, whenever something happens to those type of people, well, the terrorists, the propagandists, they use it, they go out across the Western world and they say that they're being victimized, that they're being terrorized, and that they say that they're living in an apartheid state. Whenever we hear the sound of people on our streets here in the United Kingdom, in Ireland, right across the Western world, whenever they say that Palestine should be free from the river to the sea, well, I believe as a person, as a rational, sane minded person, I believe that the only thing that Palestine should be free of is Hamas. Because if Hamas was taken out of the equation, if the terrorists were taken out of the equation, if the people in Palestine were to be left alone to have some investment, to create jobs, to flourish, well, that region could be returned to a place of normality and a place of prosperity, in where the ordinary Palestinian people, well, they could live free from any form of manipulation, any form of coercive control, and any form of terrorism meted out by those that call themselves the protectors of Palestine. Living in Northern Ireland, we've seen it in the past. We've seen it in the past whereby that the IRA, these people that actually would support, they say that they support Palestine to be free from the river to the sea. Well, we've seen how that they would have caused riots, how that they would have used their own people, how that they would use the cover of their own people to fire at security forces. And then whenever something happens, whenever a plastic bullet hits someone, well, they were innocent people. They were out for, getting a pint of milk or a loaf of bread. They weren't involved in any rioting. But however, the terrorists were the people that manipulated into place the circumstances and where people were actually harmed. So again, the message is that if Palestine is to be free, the only people that Palestine should be free from is really the Hamas terrorists. Now, by doing so, should the Israeli government in any way, shape or form really attack the free Palestine people, free from Hamas, that is, well, then it would show to the rest of the world who really is the aggressor, who the instigators are, and who the people are against humanity and creating genocide actually are. So I just really wanted to discuss that. Now, whilst in Auschwitz just a few weeks ago, we can't help but look at history's patterns. We can't help but look at the very fact that, well, there's a lot of people in this world that don't like the Jews for whatever reason. And what we're seeing right now across the Western world as a result of the propaganda which is being propagated against Jews, well, what we see is that, well, didn't it happen in Manchester just a few weeks ago where someone called Jihad, he murdered Jewish people. Now, you've got to ask yourself a question, why did the BBC were using this man's second name? Why did the BBC were omitting the name Jihad from their news bulletins and from their reports? Well, it's simply because that, well, is there activists in the media? Are there people in the media that don't like the Jews? Are there people in the media that would, place some sort of allegiance with the terrorists that want to wipe out and want to destroy Israel? So here we are today in 2025, in October of 2025, and in Northern Ireland this week, there has been a delegation of people, politicians, MLAs, that has went to Israel to see what it is that the Israeli government's take is in what happened between Israel and Palestine over the years. Because we don't hear that on the media, we don't hear that in the BBC, we don't hear that in ITV. And here there is, well, I guess the Israeli government's attempt to put a counter narrative to the propaganda which is spewed out by Hamas, the terrorists, the people that are designated terrorists. Now, on cue are the people from within the Northern Ireland Assembly. On cue are the people on the media. On cue is William Crawley today on the BBC at 12 o'clock on BBC Radio Ulster, in where, well, it comes across as the BBC are totally against anyone that would try to put the counter narrative to the Hamas terrorists when they say that Israel is creating genocide in Gaza. Now, you've got to ask yourself the question why. You've got to ask yourself why that people simply don't like Jews, why that people would align themselves with Palestine should be free from the river to the sea, which is unquestionably the call for the eradication, the extermination of the Jews, in which that we seen in the 1940s. Whilst in outfits and going to places like the concentration camps, walking around the camp and understanding what happened in the 1940s, and how that it was that so many people could be wound up against a particular portion of people, namely the Jews. How that it is that whenever something happens to them, how that it is because of the propaganda, because of what people have been told that Jews are responsible for, well, then the world turns a blind eye, and should anything happen to Jews in the future, well, it doesn't seem like a bad thing. But the reality is this. You know, as a British citizen, as someone that lives in the United Kingdom, as someone who is not happy with what my politicians are doing, who is not happy with, namely, Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer's government is doing, who is not happy with what Tony Blair has done in the past, well, I'm not happy. Can anyone in the rest of the world blame me for what Tony Blair has done, say, for example, in the past? So by that logic, how can anyone blame the Jewish people for what it is that they are saying that the Israeli government are doing in Palestine? So that was just a thought. Now, coming soon to Truth Podcast, I am making a documentary with reference the what I seen in Auschwitz and Birkenau and in Poland and in the Jewish quarter and in the ghettos as I travelled around. And really what I want to be exploring is the striking similarities between what happened then and what is happening now in 2025 within the United Kingdom, within Ireland, around the Western world. Are we going to be the type of people who, well, as it would have said in the first room in Auschwitz when you walk into, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it? Are we going to be that type of people, those type of people who fail to look at every side of an equation and who fail to understand, well, because of the actions of a few, because of the actions of Hamas, we can't blame the Palestinian people. Because of the actions of the Israeli government in where that say that people has lost their lives, well, we can't blame the Jewish people. This is madness, and this won't end well. Coming soon to Truth Podcast, a documentary about, well, what happened in the past. Are we seeing striking similarities to what's happening in the present in October in 2025? Thanks for listening. I'll see you all soon. Echoes linger
They're built home, can't kill the truth with a hollow drone. Hands or eyes clenched in fists, history's patterns, they won't be